But there is also another problem, and in my opinion, it's extremely serious. It's the issue of after-school activities in Paris. We found that after-school supervisors employed by Paris City Hall were transferred, not fired, after being accused of sexual assault against underage children, some as young as 3.
Hello, Guillaume.
Hello, Vincent Lapierre.
We're in Paris, in front of Paris City Hall, the beautiful Hôtel de Ville. Why are we here and who are you?
So, what are we doing here? I am Guillaume Leroy. I lead the association Citizen Transparency, which first became known because we reported Anne Hidalgo's trip to Tahiti, a trip that caused quite a stir in Paris. That's why we're standing in front of this beautiful city hall, one of France's finest. After that, we became known for other cases, especially for revealing Anne Hidalgo's expense reports. But we take action all over France, not just in Paris. It's true the most attention was on cases in Paris involving Anne Hidalgo.
So you're an anti-corruption group?
Correct. We're an association fighting corruption among elected officials. Not private companies, only elected officials. We ensure they act with integrity because our democracy relies on it. If people stop trusting elected officials, our democracy as we know it ends.
Tell me, which case did you bring to light?
So, our very first case was reporting Anne Hidalgo's trip to Tahiti to the authorities. Anne Hidalgo, she went to Tahiti as part of the organization of the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. And she went to Tahiti, which is 15,000 kilometers from here, to visit the surfing facilities. Except that in fact she didn't go. Where did she go? She visited her daughter in the neighboring town. Part of the trip was official, but she didn't go to the surfing facilities, but went to her daughter's for a private trip.
How do you know she didn't check out the surfing facilities?
Well, because all of that was revealed by Le Canard Enchaîné, in particular. Your colleagues at Le Canard Enchaîné reported that she never went there. So we continued the investigation a bit. We looked into it and thought, well, that's still strange. We investigated and requested documents from City Hall, especially round-trip tickets, to see if they had paid for them but never received them. And she herself, after our report, said that she went to see her daughter, but that she paid for her return ticket out of her own pocket. Did Paris City Hall pay for the ticket? Did Anne Hidalgo pay for the return ticket? We asked for confirmation and requested copies of the tickets they paid for. No answer. We believe unclear situations usually mean something suspicious. And in this case, there's something really fishy. Since we never got the answer we wanted, there are other things that surprised me too. For example, she posts on her social media during the trip. She puts up videos of herself riding a bike in Paris, even though she's actually in Tahiti. As if she had something to cover up, something that wasn't right. And that really surprised me. Given all that, we filed a report with the authorities. And following that, the National Financial Prosecutor's Office opened an investigation, which led to the search of Anne Hidalgo's office. We're waiting for the prosecutor's decision on whether she'll face criminal court for this.
So no court decision has been made yet? No?
She, like everyone else, currently enjoys the presumption of innocence. Ms. Dati, for example, also benefits from this, even as she faces an upcoming corruption trial. Both benefit from the presumption of innocence.
All right, so there are still mechanisms provided by law to monitor elected officials.
Of course. There are offenses that must not be committed, mainly embezzlement of public funds, which means using public money for private purposes. And that's what we accused Hidalgo of, corruption. And there you go. So it's all these offenses that are going to regulate the behavior of elected officials. And when they commit these offenses normally, the justice system is supposed to take action and impose significant penalties on those elected officials who misuse public money.
For Tahiti, what approximate amounts are we discussing if your claim is accurate?
Well, there are several things. The first thing is the round-trip plane ticket and all the expenses related to that. This trip was estimated at 30,000 euros. But there was a second issue that came up. It turns out that Ms. Hidalgo spent about, I believe, 30,000 euros in out-of-plan charges because she hadn't selected a data roaming plan. And so, in Tahiti, it's no longer the mainland France. So, 30,000 euros in out-of-plan charges, right? So all of that adds up, which makes a total amount of almost 100,000 euros.
All right.
So those are really significant amounts, after all.
And you, how do you actually go about getting that data? Do you send an email to the City Hall and then they have an obligation to respond?
We have several data sources. We have reports made by citizens who send us documents. And for that, we thank them very much for the trust they place in the association. We either use data from the press in our reports or obtain it ourselves by requesting it from authorities, even taking the matter to administrative court if needed. It's a right to access administrative documents. Any citizen who requests them can obtain them. For example, we can request expense reports, administrative documents from our elected officials and mayors.
How long do they take to respond to you?
Normally they have a 1-month deadline. But of course, very few of them actually respond to me within a month. Next, I need to contact the Commission for Access to Administrative Documents, CADA, then go to the Administrative Court. But you see, I made this request more than a year and a half ago for Mr. Estrosi. I haven't received a response. Oh, really? I'm before the Administrative Court. I'm waiting for a hearing date to finally get these expense reports from Mr. Estrosi. Okay, and?
Are there other organizations that do this? I hope so.
In France? Yes. On the fight against corruption? Yes, of course. There are other organizations. For example, there's Anticor. But Anticor? Why didn't I join Anticor? It's because Anticor has a particular view of independence, in my opinion, because every year they go to the Fête de l'Humanité. They have a booth there. So consequently, you can doubt their independence. So I preferred not to join Anticor and to create my own organization to make sure that elected officials are involved in the fight against corruption.
They might say yes, but you're speaking to Vincent Lapierre.
Yes, I talk to everyone. Well, for me, clearly, I didn't sign up for an event linked to a political party because the venue, Fête de l'Humanité, belongs to the French Communist Party. So that's really significant. But having said that, I talk to everyone. When asked about elected officials' integrity, I respond positively to your request.
All right, thank you for that.
It's only natural.
And so for Anne Hidalgo, you also highlighted Anne Hidalgo's expense reports.
So actually, in fact, there is... After the Tahiti gate, we received a report from a resident of Aix who told me that his mother, in this case Mrs. Joissin, in Aix-en-Provence, was doing whatever she wanted with public money on expense reports. She had a reputation for being very spendthrift. So we requested the expense reports. We actually noticed that it was completely out of control. When I say out of control, I mean almost several times a week, hairdresser visits, nail salons, beauty treatments, clothing, and all of that is public money. So we sent a report to the Court of Auditors. Apparently, she agreed to reimburse those expenses. So it's also a first victory for the association. And then I wondered if it was an isolated incident, if it was only the mayor of Aix-en-Provence who was misusing these expense reports, or if it was a system in France of abusing public money through expense reports. So I requested all the expense reports from all the mayors of towns with more than 10,000 inhabitants. That means I've sent more than 1,000 requests. I sent 1,000 requests to every town in France with over 10,000 people. And we've received about 700 files so far. So that's a pretty good success rate since we've had more than 70% positive responses. We chose to take the 10 largest city halls to administrative court because they refused to give us the data. Paris, Dijon, Montpellier, Marseille, we had to go to administrative court to obtain them. Some gave them to us, others did not. And so the only two mayors who have responded so far are Mr. Estrosi and Mr. Elliott. For the others, we have the documents. We're still in a legal dispute with Paris City Hall over pending travel expense reports, which I think is the main issue.
Ah oui.
So there are still 3 mayors with whom there is ongoing litigation before the courts. We'll see how it goes and hope for a favorable court response. I really count on it because I think that without those documents, we won't be able to shed light on how the elected officials spend public money.
Regarding Anne Hidalgo, you found some surprising things.
So about Anne Hidalgo, Anne Hidalgo has a history with expense reports. We weren't the first to ask for Anne Hidalgo's expenses. There was a Dutch journalist in 2017 who had to wait almost 5 years to get Anne Hidalgo's expense reports, and she didn't even give them to him, she gave them to other journalists. A sore loser, she lost in court and chose to give the expense reports to Parisians. Oh really? Yes, and I was surprised. I thought it wasn't very classy of her. Then there were Parisian groups, in this case, who started legal proceedings to get the expenses. Same thing, they weren't able to get them. We, I think, were maybe more persistent, and we managed to get these documents, which were given to us last April. And I gave them to Mediapart, who thought it was information from a public company and decided to reveal it. After that, we discovered that in fact over 4 years it was 80,000 euros spent on clothing. All kinds. It's Dior jeans, dresses, shoes. In short, it's still all kinds of clothing. Both luxury and everyday clothes.
No way.
Yes, 80,000 euros paid by the people of Paris.
How do expense reports work? Anne Hidalgo travels, she keeps the receipts, and then who does she give them to? To an organization? So, and doesn't the organization check them?
So, expense reports can work in several different ways. The first way is, you're given an allowance and you do whatever you want with it. It's deposited into the elected official's bank account at the beginning of the year, and they do whatever they want with it. That's not the case in Paris. Some places have a maximum limit and still require receipts, like in Paris. The mayor of Paris, for example, had to submit all receipts. Okay. At the city hall's accounting department,
Ah, yes, well, to herself, you know.
To herself, yes. But the truth is, no one said anything to her at City Hall. Because it wasn't rejected, she didn't have to pay them back.
They are placed by her.
Well, yes, they are indeed hierarchically not independent, we agree. Well, obviously.
It's poorly done, the system is poorly made.
The system is poorly made, and necessary checks, especially by the Court of Auditors, are never done. I believe this isn't intentional. It's simply that they have so many things to check. The Court of Auditors and Regional Chamber of Accounts have only a few thousand staff and can't review all public accounting and expense reports. It's too complex for them. That's why we decided to handle it. We chose to conduct some public ethics oversight on the expense reports. All right. And so, in Paris, indeed, she gave her expense reports to her accountant. Her accountant approved them and said, okay, very well, I won't reimburse you because you received a lump sum at the beginning of the year that was deposited into your account, and that's it.
So 80,000 euros over 4 years?
80,000 euros on clothes, just on clothes, because besides that, there are also all the travel expenses, the travel costs. When she goes on business trips, her tickets, well, that's normal. Her tickets are paid for by City Hall, but also all her hotels, her restaurants during those trips, that's paid for by the City Hall.
We paid 80,000 euros for clothes.
Parisians spent 80,000 euros on Anne Hidalgo's clothes.
In 4 years, 80,000 euros.
In 4 years, and now the municipal elections are coming up, and she's been in office for 12 years. So you multiply that by 3.
But is that for sure? Is that proven? Can we demonstrate it?
What? I have all the supporting documents that were given to me. So all the supporting documents for the... It seems to me that there are about 100 clothing expenses. Everything was given to me and I published them on the association's website. So all of that, yes, it's accounting. Everything is reliable and justified. If there were any reliability issues with those documents, Mediapart obviously wouldn't have published them, but they did because they made requests to City Hall. They gave City Hall a chance to respond, which it mostly accepted. City Hall confirms providing the documents, which show a total of 80,000 euros spent on clothing.
What do they make of that?
Well, listen, they said, and that surprised me, we followed the law. There's no problem. Meanwhile, the PNF, the National Financial Prosecutor's Office, also opened a new investigation into the mayor of Paris's expenses. This clearly shows a legal issue remains. And what really disappointed me is that at a time when it's clear that the economy isn't doing well, public spending is increasing exponentially, and we're having trouble, we're borrowing more and more. We have a mayor of Paris who spends 80,000 euros on clothes and doesn't even think to apologize to her constituents by saying, yes, actually, maybe it wasn't a good idea to spend 80,000 euros on clothes on an expense account.
Now let me put myself in her shoes. I'll play her advocate here. She could respond, yes, but these are representation expenses. I'm the mayor of Paris. Paris is an internationally known city. I need this.
No, but having some expenses on an expense account, especially for, I'll give some very concrete examples, the purchase of a formal gown for the opening of the Olympics, that's understandable. That's understandable. And actually, that's part of the expense account. But tights, jeans, all that shouldn't be included in representation expenses. That's everyday spending. And for that, it seems to me that she still has a pretty comfortable salary, which is over 100,000 euros paid by the Paris City Hall. I think she can buy her own jeans with her 100,000 euro annual salary per year. That's an annual salary. And I think she still has the means. I'm very far from those amounts. I can still buy my own clothes.
And what did you go through because of what you revealed?
So once the expense reports were revealed by Mediapart, we decided to launch a poster campaign in Paris to inform Parisians about how Anne Hidalgo spends public money on expenses. We put some up here, we put them all over the center of Paris. We really wanted to act as whistleblowers so that Parisians would be aware of how Anne Hidalgo spends public money. Apparently things aren't going well at City Hall at all, because 2 days later, the poster campaign was done on a Saturday. On Monday, I received a fine imposed by the municipal police of the Paris City Hall, a 210,000 euro fine. That's 7 times our annual budget. That's 7 years of budget for us. Naturally, we challenged it and will continue to do so, even if it means going before the Council of State. It could take 10 years, but we'll do it. But if this fine is imposed on us, definitively imposed by the courts, the association will stop, because we won't have the means to pay 210,000 euros impossible. And besides, there are very few associations that can pay a fine. Even in France, large groups like Secours Populaire might not be able to pay a 210,000 euro fine tomorrow, so we'll stop. I see this as a major attack on freedom of expression, and above all, as retaliatory measures against a whistleblower. I find that outrageous in a democracy.
Is 210,000 euros the usual amount for fines in this context or not?
Not at all. Of course, before launching this poster campaign in Paris, I asked legal advisors to tell me what I could expect. They told me, well, most likely you could get fined, but the amounts are very minimal. The Paris City Hall, since it provides very few public display options, is actually pretty lenient, let's say, when it comes to fines for public posting. And especially when it comes to politics, the Paris City Hall never gives out fines. I'll give you an example. In 2022, during the presidential campaign, Emmanuel Macron had almost 100,000 posters put up in Paris. There was no fine. We put up about 200 or 300 posters in Paris. We received a fine of 210,000 euros. So I still believe that it was a retaliatory measure by the Paris City Hall against the association, especially since we did some research, particularly on the person who sent us the fine. And we found out, and I was surprised but not really, that this person was a socialist activist. He publicly participated in Rémi Ferro's campaign, who was Anne Hidalgo's candidate for the municipal elections. So he took part in this political campaign for the Socialist Party. When I saw that, I thought, no, but I think it's amateurish to have an activist give us such a hefty fine. And above all, it suggests that the municipal police in this matter were not independent at all.
You mean he gave you the fine, he sent you the fine?
He sent us the fine, which is still imposed by the municipal police, because it's the municipal police who issue the fine. And the municipal police, whose command staff is under the responsibility of Anne Hidalgo appoints the head of the municipal police with advice from the Paris Police Prefecture.
Wow. Okay, but we're good here, right?
Listen, that's it. But really, I really felt like I was dealing with, in those situations, and it's a word that might sound harsh, but honestly, I felt like I was dealing with a mafia.
Yeah, a circle, the underworld.
The underworld, the Parisian underworld, that defends itself against just one thing, the revelation of expense reports. It's information of public interest. I don't see how I did anything particularly wrong. I revealed information that the City Hall gave me. It's not like I committed defamation. This is public information. I just revealed that. Here's the result. I tried to inform Parisians, but got a 210,000 euro fine.
Unbelievable.
There you go. So I hope, right now we're in front of the administrative court. We're at the first stage of the dispute process to challenge this fine. We'll see what the administrative court says.
In any case, we'll put the link in the description to support the association, Guillaume. Thank you. Citizen transparency, absolutely. In my opinion, they do very important public service work that shouldn't disappear.
We really try to serve the public by informing them about the ethical misconduct of certain elected officials, especially when they misuse public funds for their own personal interests. That's what's really troubling.
Of course.
So there you go. But indeed, we have to deal with significant legal fees. So yes, a donation can help us. In fact, every donation will help us. This is a fight we'll wage for the next 10 years, I think. We're at the first stage with the Administrative Court. Then comes the Administrative Court of Appeal, followed by the Council of State. This will last 10 years. We're in a judicial marathon.
Why are you doing this?
Well, listen, I think today we're facing a distrust that is becoming widespread among the people toward their elected officials. I still believe that the representative system as we know it in France under the Fifth Republic works. It works if we have honest elected officials. But the problem is, the day when no one trusts the elected officials anymore, this system will collapse on its own. And I think it's important to make elected officials understand that it's in their best interest to behave with integrity, because otherwise the system will collapse. So they need to be careful. And there need to be people watching.
There needs to be pressure.
Pressure is needed, and people must pay attention to what's happening. Unfortunately, I still notice that the justice system is overloaded with work, so not everything gets handled. Tahiti Gate, in my opinion, was a fairly easy investigation. It had to be shown that, yes, Anne Hidalgo's return ticket was paid for by the City Hall, and she could have been sent before the criminal court. But still, they didn't do it. This case has been pending before the courts for 2 years because the prosecutor hasn't made a decision. And so the National Financial Prosecutor's Office, I don't know how many cases they have right now, but it's a staggering number, so they need help, and help from associations like mine.
It took you, Guillaume, giving up your own time for these documents to come out. That's what seems crazy to me.
So about the expense reports, yes, it actually took a lot of time. It took 1.5 years to get the documents. 1.5 years. It's a long-term battle against Paris City Hall and other municipalities, and it takes a lot of time. Otherwise, no one cares about it. Nobody's interested in it. Why? Because elected officials don't necessarily want us to expose or reveal how they use public money, especially when they have things to hide.
Obviously.
So our main missions are to fight corruption and inform people about their elected officials' behavior.
And what other case do you have in store?
So, listen, since our first action went pretty well, we have a lot of people sending us cases in Paris. A lot of people. So, we have cases like a civil servant from the Paris City Hall who sent us a report saying that the grants office, which is an office that gives opinions on awarded grants, well, he couldn't do his whistleblower job anymore. Why? The opinions from that office, given by independent civil servants, were always changed if they were unfavorable. That is to say, there is a procedure that was created by the Paris City Hall to allocate grants. To associations? To associations. Okay, that's 300 million euros in grants per year. So those are amounts that are quite 300 million to associations. So over the last 10 years, that's 3 billion euros. You can get a sense of the scale, the magnitude of the system, of the phenomenon. And so
The association submits a request to the City Hall saying, here, I need this amount for...
there are several steps indeed. The first step is the grant application by the association, which needs public funding to carry out its mission. After the request is made, elected officials at Paris City Hall conduct an initial screening. The elected officials of the Paris City Hall are the majority. They are generally more favorable, rather favorable, to granting subsidies.
Why is that, by the way?
A desire for redistribution? It's a socialist city hall, so broad public money redistribution isn't surprising. However, it must be done properly. And so it allocates subsidies based on this request, on the opinion of an elected official. And then it goes through an office, the Office for Association Subsidies, which must give an independent opinion on the organization itself.
So Anne Hidalgo didn't appoint them?
They're civil servants of the city of Paris, but they're not appointed by Anne Hidalgo. And normally Anne Hidalgo the majority at City Hall doesn't have control over these opinions, normally, all right? Except what we discovered is that the opinions that were issued, the unfavorable opinions that were issued by that office, are being changed. After this opinion is issued, it's then sent to an elected official who isn't even aware of the risks that this subsidy poses to City Hall.
That is to say, here we need to be precise.
I'm very precise. You have an initial opinion issued by a civil servant who forwards it to their management for communication to the elected official who will present the subsidy to the Paris Council. This independent civil servant will issue an opinion that can be favorable, with reservations, or unfavorable.
But it's just an opinion.
It's an opinion, but it's an opinion issued by an independent civil servant who bases it on tangible documents, accounting records, and a lot of other elements that he can find himself through his own research, which allow him to determine, first, if there is a risk of a conflict of interest. It exists. Unfortunately, at the Paris City Hall, I have examples of associations that are chaired by a Paris councillor who allocates subsidies to himself. It happens. So that's an obvious example of a conflict of interest. And that's stated in the opinions. Then there's the financial reliability, the viability of the project run by the association. If the project has no chance of succeeding, it's better not to put public funds into it, because otherwise the money is just thrown out the window. And so these opinions, when they are issued by the civil servant at Paris City Hall, are sent to their department, and the department changes the opinions when they're not suitable to send them to the elected officials who don't even know what they're actually going to vote on.
Does the department make an unfavorable opinion favorable by changing it?
Or conditional?
Or conditional?
He changes unfavorable to conditional or even favorable. We still estimated over 40 million euros in subsidies shifted from unfavorable to favorable or conditional.
Okay, and so this project that needs to be funded is sent to the elected official. Why do you think the elected official doesn't know about the file?
He knows about the file, but with the modified opinion.
He doesn't know that the opinion was unfavorable. No.
And so, as a result, he is going to get involved. He is going to take political responsibility by saying, I support this association and the subsidy that will be granted to it because we believe that the project is financially viable. Actually, no, because it was previously unfavorable. He no longer knows if the project is feasible or if there's a potential conflict of interest. He just doesn't know anymore.
So, is the project put to a vote?
The project is voted on and the amount is transferred to the association's account.
Wow, okay, all right. So there are facilitators for association funding. Exactly.
Exactly. It's especially concerning since these are huge sums, 300 million euros in subsidies per year.
Can you prove that too?
Sure, that was revealed by your colleagues at Le Point, who, like us, had access to the documents and both versions of the opinions. the version provided by the official in question, and the opinion that was sent to the elected official. And you can clearly see both versions. You can see the change from the unfavorable opinion to the favorable one, with certain statements that were removed. For example, obvious risk of conflict of interest, boom, removed.
Is it erased?
It's erased, it no longer appears on the new opinion.
But is there no justification for this erasure? No. Like, we conducted an investigation and actually, no, he doesn't have a conflict of interest. There's nothing like that.
And I was able to see for myself that one of the associations in particular was founded by a Paris councillor and received significant amounts of subsidies. On that opinion, I was able to see it was marked conflict of interest because the association is run by a Paris councillor. So that's factual. There's nothing to interpret, it's factual. The Paris councillor is also the head of the association that receives subsidies. There is a risk of conflict of interest. In the new version, nothing anymore. No more mention of conflict of interest, even though it's an objective fact with no debate.
And what does the Paris City Hall say about that?
The Paris City Hall responds that this procedure has been changed, but they haven't explained to us how it was changed.
So they acknowledge an issue with the previous procedure?
No, because they blame the official who gave us the opinions. Supposedly because he has an unfavorable rate of 85%, which is completely false. Saying we can prove that too. Because he gave us all the opinions they gave us, and he actually has an unfavorable rate of about 10%, which is the same as all his colleagues.
All right. So here there's a lie?
From the Paris City Hall, obviously. We'll see what the next mayor of Paris does about subsidies. I think some regulation is necessary. There are obvious cases of subsidies being granted that raise questions. And I think it's an issue of good management of public money, because, I repeat, these are such large amounts. In 10 years, that's a third of Paris's debt. That's true in Paris and throughout France.
That's right, let's talk about it.
That's the case everywhere in France. We've seen that there's an obligation for all associations that receive more than 153,000 euros in public funds to, first, have their accounts audited by a statutory auditor, and then publish their accounts at the prefecture. Makes sense. It's obvious. Citizens should be able to see how associations use public subsidies.
So, as someone who's not involved in any of this, we haven't talked about this yet, I expect you to tell me that this rule is followed and that's how it is.
The subsidies granted by the state amount to about 11 to 12 billion euros per year. We conducted this study. 35% of associations that receive more than 153,000 euros do not publish their accounts.
How many?
35%, 35%, 35%. In Paris, that's the figure. That's the analysis we did. In Paris, that figure goes up to 68%. 68% of associations getting over 153,000 euros don't publish their accounts. We can't verify how it works.
Isn't there a law fining you for not publishing? Yes.
Of course, but that fine is never imposed. That fine is never imposed. It's a fairly substantial fine. It's 9,000 euros per year. I've noticed some associations haven't published accounts in 10 years, and so there's no oversight of that.
And what is the authority that's supposed to oversee this actually doing? What are they doing? What are they paid to do?
Unfortunately, that's a lack of oversight. There's an obvious lack of oversight here.
Who is supposed to oversee this?
The city halls that grant subsidies and the prefectures.
But City Hall acts as both judge and participant.
Yes, but still, it's obvious. And we check if it meets the legal requirements. The association you subsidized, it's obvious. City Hall and the prefecture should handle it, but the prefecture doesn't due to staff shortages. The total for all the prefectures in France is about 50,000 employees, fewer than the Paris City Hall alone. You can see they don't have time for everything, since prefectures must manage the public and ensure elected officials follow the law. But they don't have time to check if the subsidies granted are legal. They don't have time to do it, so it should mainly be up to the city halls after all. They're the ones who provide the funds. It's up to them to make sure that this obligation to publish the accounts is respected. But they don't do it. So here,
the state still gives very large amounts of money to associations, a third of which do not report their accounts.
they don't publish their accounts. In fact, we don't even have a way to check if they have their accounts audited by a statutory auditor who would verify the proper use of the funds. We don't know. There is total opacity, a completely obvious lack of transparency, and nobody is doing anything about it. And that's what worries me. At the very least, there should be some awareness admitting, yes, we made a mistake. There is a lack of oversight. From now on, we'll ensure the associations publish their accounts. That's fine with me. The problem is, I don't get that kind of response from them. I give them these numbers, and they tell me, yes, but you understand association subsidies shouldn't be questioned. It's important for social life. That might be true. But there's a legal obligation. It has to be respected.
And you, they fined you more than 200,000 euros. You?
And me, they fined me 200,000 euros because I put up 200 posters in Paris? So indeed, it kind of shows a double standard. And the feeling of facing an environment that doesn't want us to change its habits.
It depresses me deeply.
Also, it has to be said, there's citizen transparency which is taking action in Paris, but it's not just citizen transparency that's bringing cases to light. There's the Paris habitat scandal that came out recently, where public funds were embezzled by elected officials.
Go ahead, tell us about it.
Listen, we realized that there were personal expenses of elected officials that were paid for by the companies managing social housing in Paris. The social housing offices in Paris spent money for the private interests of elected officials in Paris.
For large amounts?
I don't know the amounts since the investigation hasn't begun. We didn't conduct this investigation ourselves, so I can't specify the amounts. In my view, though, there's another very serious problem. It's the issue of after-school programs in Paris. We realized that after-school program supervisors, employees of the Paris City Hall, were transferred when they faced accusations of social assault against underage children, sometimes very young as 3 years old. And these people were not removed from their contact with children. They were not fired. They were transferred to another facility.
How many people does this involve?
As of the latest information, it involves about 75 people. 75 people? There are 75 employees of the Paris City Hall who manage after-school activities with children and who have been reassigned following accusations of social aggression towards children.
That's factual, that is.
That's factual.
That's indisputable in a court of law.
That's indisputable in a court of law. And once again, just recently, there was a case that came out. Someone transferred from the 7th to the 15th district who then committed rape on a 3-year-old child. A procedure has just been launched against this person in assize court, which is quite serious. Nothing happened for years. And now, once again, and that saddens me too, no self-questioning, no statement of responsibility, nothing at all. We sweep the issue under the rug by saying, we'll do better next time. But no one said, we messed up.
Why do they do that?
They avoid questioning their responsibilities. This applies to the after-school activities and expense reports. Expense reports, it's obvious there was reason to apologize, to say, yes, maybe I wasn't diligent in the way I paid, in the way I spent public money. Listen, I did wrong, I'll pay it back, and it won't happen again. But not even that. The only consequence of this is that an organization that blew the whistle was sentenced to pay a fine of 210,000 euros. Elected officials never admit responsibility. It's very serious. And it's the same at the municipal level. How many elected officials have been convicted and are still going to run again? And nobody is bothered by it. I find it astonishing that they don't even have the option to say, no, actually, I'm not worthy. I don't feel worthy of standing before my voters again because I've been convicted by the justice system. I find that surprising.
There should be a legal filter.
Ultimately, it's up to the voter to decide. He was convicted, so I won't vote for him. I think it's up to the people to decide who represents them, even if the person running has committed acts for which they were convicted. Justice, it's up to voters to decide. I won't vote for someone who's been convicted. That's my choice. I won't vote for anyone who's been convicted, regardless of their platform. The point is, the person who has been convicted, I can't trust them. I can't trust them with public money or to follow through on their platform. So I'm not voting for them.
That's it. This whole after-school thing is making me completely... really, it's crazy. It's really crazy.
Especially since, in fact, it amounts to covering up for criminals. When we discuss rape, we're discussing crime. We're talking about things that are punishable by 10 to 15 years in prison. Here, it's about minors. This is hard to say, but the life of a 3-year-old child will never be the same again. And I think that the Paris City Hall could have, by taking very firm measures, that is, automatic dismissal or removal, as soon as there are accusations of sexual assault. Maybe these acts wouldn't have happened to some children who could be living normal lives today, but now that's impossible.
Whoa. So you're saying that Paris isn't the only city you have in your sights?
Yes, that's right. We've worked on other cities. We've received reports about... I think there must be about 80 cities in France, of various sizes, that are affected. It ranges from the misuse of public funds on expense reports to corruption with suitcases full of cash received by officials in exchange for public contracts. Well, yes, and it still happens. It still happens.
Public contracts there must involve a lot of money.
Public contracts, unfortunately, involve such huge amounts of money. Even I feel completely powerless in the face of how big the public contracts phenomenon is. There are hundreds of millions of euros that, at a city level, are awarded every year to public contracts. I don't have the capacity, not even the time or physical ability, to check just the public contracts. Just in Paris, I don't have the time to do it. It's not possible. There are too many public contracts.
Also, you can't really know if a suitcase of cash is being sent secretly.
So no, when it comes to suitcases full of cash, no, we can't. But on the other hand, with favoritism, for example, we can compare the different bids submitted by the public contract candidates and realize that in fact, there was one that was much better than the others, yet it wasn't chosen. Why? Well, that could be favoritism. And so in that case, we're going to investigate, we're going to look at the connections between the leaders of the winning candidate and the official who awarded the public contract. And often we can realize that there are still some connections there. It does exist, yes, but unfortunately, as I just told you,
It's gigantic.
c'est titanesque. C'est titanesque.
Yep. Isn't there an authority in France? With all the taxes we pay, aren't people paid to handle that?
Yes, it's called the French justice system, but as I just told you, it's overwhelmed with cases because they have to deal with elected officials, but they also have to handle criminals, everyday crime, traffic accidents. Well, they just don't have the physical capacity to handle everything. There's also the Court of Auditors, but they lack enough staff to manage everything. And besides, there is actually a problem at the Court of Auditors today. It was decided that the first president of the Court of Auditors, the one who leads the institution, is the former budget minister, Amélie de Montchalin. I don't see how she can be independent about public budgets, knowing that she herself wrote them with her ministry. How can she say that this was done badly when she was the one who did it before, as Minister of Public Accounts? So I think there's a lack of independence now at the Court of Auditors, which doesn't give me much confidence in this institution. I'm increasingly reluctant to send reports to the Court of Auditors, fearing they won't be handled independently and impartially. That's not the case with the justice system. I have enough confidence that they will handle the reports I send them properly. In fact, I get responses quite regularly from magistrates who tell me, yes, there's a case, no, there's not a case, we're going to launch an investigation or not. It works. It works. Yes, there are always things to criticize, of course, but it works. Overall, it works. The Court of Auditors, I really have issues because I think that this latest appointment made by Emmanuel Macron of Ms. de Montchalin raises real questions about independence and impartiality. We'll see how it turns out. I'll keep sending reports and give them the benefit of the doubt.
So what are they doing about public contracts?
Normally, they're supposed to check a certain number of public contracts every year. They sample but can't always find public contracts with issues. They will find problematic public contracts and may or may not report them to the justice system. But normally they're supposed to check, but they can't check everything. It's not possible.
Elected officials take a risk by doing it, but it's not a very high risk.
Yes, and in my opinion, there aren't enough sanctions imposed on elected officials. No, some are acquitted because there's a lack of evidence. But that's normal. That's normal in a properly functioning republic. Of course, the presumption of innocence applies to everyone, to anyone subject to the law. So, necessarily, if we don't have the means to prove that they did it, we can't convict them. Nevertheless, that doesn't mean they didn't commit the acts. I think that justice could be stricter with elected officials because they are... If elected officials are severely punished now, they'll be more careful in the future. There's a real aspect of thinking twice before committing an offense against integrity, because otherwise I'll be sentenced to 10 years in prison. But elected officials who are sentenced to actual prison time, that almost never happens. There's the example of Mr. Sarkozy, fine. But that's just one example among the hundreds of elected officials who are convicted every year. It's small fines, it's suspended prison sentences that they'll never serve, but why would they act with integrity if they're not punished at all afterwards?
And you said that with Estrosi it was the same. You had some difficulties getting documents.
So yes, we made this request for expenses, as I told you earlier, to all the town halls of municipalities with more than 10,000 inhabitants. That obviously includes Nice. We've been requesting them for 18 months and went to the administrative court. I wasn't able to get those documents. And for me, I consider that from the moment an elected official doesn't give me those documents, it means he wants to hide something. All right.
So we're not sure?
Oh no, we're not sure. I can't say for certain he's hiding something, but honestly, I don't see any other reason not to give them to me. Why won't he give them to me?
Indeed, it's suspicious.
It's suspicious. But of course, I'm not going to say he's misusing public money. I don't know. But I wish I could say it. I'd like to know whether or not he's using public money for personal purposes. That's all. And actually, that's the basis of transparency. It's just to be able to trust our elected officials. We know that he published his expense reports. We saw that there was no problem. And so, we trust this official. We know he uses public money for mostly normal purposes.
No, and then this idea that for awarding public contracts, there's a body that occasionally does random checks, that's not enough. It's taxpayers' money. It should be checked every time a public contract is approved. It should be validated by an independent body. A very strict filter is needed since it's about money.
It's money. It's money. We're talking about money. It's what you and I spend in taxes.
It's irresponsible to say we're going to let an overloaded authority do random checks from time to time, and then maybe one day there will be a fine or a suspended prison sentence, but that's too little compared to what's at stake. It's too little, I agree. It's not enough. The oversight isn't strict enough.
It's also a reason for hope, and I will say this. It's a reason for hope. It's that, thank you. It's still that, well, there is so much public money being thrown out the window the day there is real oversight, and it takes political courage to do it. But the day someone does it, who sets up controls, we can save so much public money. So much public money. I sincerely believe that the 3% deficit will no longer exist the day there is real oversight. Because every year, more or less, the state creates a budget that is essentially 3% in deficit. I think that if there is real oversight, if elected officials say to themselves, I can't do whatever I want with public money because I'm being monitored all the time, this 3% deficit will disappear overnight. So that's a reason for hope.
So there's room for improvement?
We have a good margin for improvement.
We often tell ourselves this for comfort. We messed up, but there's room to improve.
I think that in these very gloomy times, we also need to keep reasons for hope. It's important. No, really.
I'm stunned by what you're telling me, by what I'm hearing here. I'm stunned. Still, damn, I know the situation is complicated, but every time I'm surprised.
Yeah, but that's exactly the point of associations like ours, like Citizen Transparency, to inform as many people as possible.
Help them now. If anyone needs help today, it's them. Thank you.
And indeed, it's about informing people, because nobody knows that. Until Anne Hidalgo's expense reports, nobody kept the expense reports. Even the Court of Auditors, like I mentioned earlier, when I requested the expense reports, an elected official called me about them. I asked for the reports, and he responded, I'm in a tough spot because I never kept receipts during my 23 years as mayor, since my expense reports were never audited. So he figured, without audits, he'd just toss the receipts. So he told me, I can't give you any documents, I throw them away every year. Every year, I consider that I've submitted them to my city hall, I've given them to my city hall. Well, after that, they do whatever they want with them, and every year, they throw them away. So he himself can't justify how he spends the money claimed in expense reports.
There are so few checks that they figure it's actually pointless to keep the expense reports.
That's it. That's exactly it. So, well, listen, there you go. Now, at least the advantage of the association's action is that now the elected officials know that someone is going to check now, at least for the expense reports. So they'll at least pay attention to that. You? Yes, us, Citizen Transparency, will check now.
Crazy, really.
We're going to ask for them every year. We'll make these same requests. Every town with more than 10,000 inhabitants, please give us the expense reports. We'll do this every year.
Manage. Actually, we pay a lot of taxes, but it's independents who do the work the state should be doing. No, but wait. For me, that's not possible.
That's just how it is. If no one does it, someone must. No, but I agree with you. There is a real problem. But look, I think what we're doing is public service. So we'll keep doing it. No matter the pressure we get. The €210,000 fine, the defamation charges. We have several defamation complaints that have taken us to court. We've been taken to court for defamation already. Once by the mayor of Saint-Ouen, who wasn't happy that we did a bit of an investigation into the inauguration of his own political party that he held in the city where he's mayor, in a stadium that turned out to be private. But we don't know how he was able to invite 4,000 people with a political party that claimed to have just been created. So we asked the city hall some questions. We asked the city hall to give us documents. They never gave us the documents. So we said we were going to take the matter to the administrative court to get the documents. No news yet, still waiting. He found it defamatory and took us to criminal court.
Yes, actually, they're trying to intimidate you.
Exactly that. Exactly, they're trying to intimidate us. But we're stubborn. We won't give in. We won't stop what we're doing because I think we're doing really important work for the health of our democracy. And if we don't do it, I'm really scared. I think the representative system will collapse, and I don't know what will come after. That's what worries me. If the representative system collapses, what will happen tomorrow? What will happen? I don't know. There you go. That's why we're doing all this.
Well, thank you, Guillaume.
With great pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
No, thank you for what you do.
I'm a hunter. He's a France TV employee, director of special operations, and an elected official at Paris City Hall. He earns 100,000 euros a year at France TV. Paris City Hall, 55,000 euros annually. We reported it to the National Financial Prosecutor. For now, we haven't received a response. I'm really waiting for a judicial decision on this point because it would really show that there's a real limit to combining a private job and an elected office.